So as of now, the Elasticsearch cluster, which is now serving the data and more data is indexed, is in state yellow. That's one thing. Then the other thing, it's not HA because each index is configured to have one replica. And so that means I can now go, let's have a deeper look into the stack monitoring and see what is the current status. And there are two reasons now to extend an Elasticsearch cluster. One is, of course, high availability to have at least 2 nodes. And the other one is to improve throughput and indexing speed, or let's say, yeah, read speed, more read speed than indexing speed. And the disk availability it's now 80 gigabyte of RAM, and obviously the data is flying in, and that's why more and more data needs to be indexed. And I would like to extend that Elasticsearch cluster to have a second node. And in order to do that, it's very simple, I think. I go again to download the software package. And I'm downloading that software package now on my second Elasticsearch node. Oops. Okay. And I'm going inside here. And let me take over that file. So Elasticsearch 2. So that means I have here my Elasticsearch number 1, and I'm taking, let me refresh that. So this is the file we have configured the Elasticsearch node number 1, and I would like to have that environment file. And now I can go, to the other Elasticsearch node, where we have just extracted the release package. And let me just make sure to grab that environment file. So, and now we can go and have a look into that environment file. So that means this is the exact same copy. And the only thing I have to do now is to configure the second Elasticsearch node. So let's do that by saying hostname. I think hostname is also good. And this should be the second one. HTTPS. And as there is, let's say, some magic running in the background, it's also mentioned here in the documentation. Please, you can configure that in other ways, but if you would like to have it in the default setup, make sure that you are increasing the port numbers, because these port numbers are configured by Docker Compose automatically to make them available to the other Elasticsearch nodes, and also to make it available to the clients. So that's my the first one is this port, the second one is this port, and then you can guess what the next port is. So, and that's all. And I think it makes sense because a lot of things is derived from that Elasticsearch node configuration, also to put it into the original one, which is this one here, to have it synchronized. I think there is no need, but anyway. So, and now let's save that. And going into the documentation for that production setup, let me just scroll to the top. And here's the section production setup, which contains setup Elasticsearch multinodes. A few things of what I have already said is covered in the general remarks. And the thing I have to do now is to call not that bootstrap anymore, because we bootstrapped the cluster already. I have to tell there's another Elasticsearch cluster, or Elasticsearch node. Okay, so Docker logs Elasticsearch 2. And I think you don't see really when the second node is joining the main cluster. Maybe you see it, maybe not. but you see it in the primary cluster. So, and by the way, ignore that beat system authenticated user for now. That is something we will solve in a minute. So now let's have a look in Kibana. And now we already see that we have two Elasticsearch nodes and that the available disk space has been doubled because the other node had also 80 gigabyte of hard disks. And if I now go into the indices itself, I see that one of the indices has already changed the status from yellow to green, and the other ones will also change from yellow to green because then the unassigned shards will be solved. So that means the primary replica will then be distributed across the nodes. So if I have a look into that indice and scroll down, then I see that this indice is now stored on the first node with the primary shard, and we have the replica shards on the other node. And I'm pretty sure that the other indices are hopefully also then going into green. So that means Elasticsearch automatically is now distributing the indices across the available nodes. And when all nodes are started and distributed across all nodes, then the overall status is going back to green for the Elasticsearch cluster. So, and let's say you would like to add another Elasticsearch node, which you can easily do by the same commands. Let's say we are looking again for wget. Get the release package. Download it from here. Go into that folder. And then I'm doing again the same thing. I'm opening a session over here. All right. So, and we take that folder and we copy that environment file over here. So I think before maybe it doesn't matter, but I come to an important point at the end of the video. So that means that environment file, and again, we will extend that environment file by an additional Elasticsearch node. Hostname, this is my third node. And yeah, that's important that I do not need to forget the other node. So let's add it here, HTTPS, this is my third node, 02. And this goes over here. Yeah, the cluster name, of course, is also synchronized, which is important. Otherwise, the nodes will not join. So let's have a final look. I'm wondering that it takes so long. Yeah, but now more and more nodes. It depends on the size, I think, of the indices, how long it takes to have an index distributed across the available nodes because the data needs to be replicated and so on. So, and now let's kick it off and say we would like to have a third node. Let's step again to the production setup. And now, of course, we do not start the second anymore. We are going to start third on the third node. The project itself is prepared to have 3 nodes, but it's easily extendable. You can have up to 5 nodes, and I explain you why. Why this makes sense. You can have even more, but up to 5 it makes really sense, depending on your volume and so on. So, and let's have a look. Demo Elasticsearch. So we have now 3 nodes available. We have that amount of disk space available, and now the indices are not only shared across 2 nodes, they are now shared also across let's say all available nodes, of course. So let's go into the summary index. It's still on 1 and 2 only, but later you will see how some of these shards, maybe that one goes into the third node, or maybe that one here as well. And you see now this one here is relocating, and I'm pretty sure that a new section will appear, and then that shard number 4 will be on Elasticsearch Node number 3. Let's say we refresh that data. It takes a while, but the point is that the data which is indexed is configured to be stored in 5 shards. And these shards, or each individual shard, contain part of the data. And by now adding more Elasticsearch nodes to the cluster, you distribute the overall load by distributing the read request to an Elasticsearch node number 3 or only number 1. And by that, you can scale the throughput as necessary, or you can just add additional disk space. That's up to you. Also, it is not required that each Elasticsearch node will have the same hard disk space, or you can also allocate slower disk space to a certain Elasticsearch node, because then later you can decide what kind of shard, what kind of data should go on the slower machine, what kind of shard should go on the high volume or on the fastest machine you have available. So that means with that you can easily scale out depending on the needs you have. So you see that now the third node has been added, and the primary shard number 4 has been assigned to this Elasticsearch node. And the other one obviously as well. That takes a moment. Okay, that's basically all. Or maybe there's one thing I would like to explain concerning the ports. As I have told you, you have to take care that the ports are configured in the correct way. And as you can see, these ports here needs to be exposed, and this is what happens by default. So that means if you plan to use other ports or not using the default ports, then you have to change the Docker Compose file. But I believe it's not necessary. You can go with that ports. And the other thing now is that as you have now Elasticsearch HA, you can really stop a node. So let's say you would like to go and say we have Elasticsearch and we have a number of nodes. And one is always the primary node, the master node. And let's say we are stopping the master node and say this is actually the master, and say we have a simulated downtime and say Docker stop. Yeah, first, before I should have do that, I should complete my configuration by distributing that number of available nodes on all configuration. So that means you have to take care, because all of the clients are now using that list of Elasticsearch nodes. And as Kibana is running on the first node, it should see all available 3 nodes. So let me now Docker ps, Elasticsearch is down. We are now stopping Kibana. This is only necessary just because I have now updated the available list of hosts, and I would like to give Kibana all hosts available part of my cluster. So, and now not do a start, because then you would reboot the container or restart the container with the exact same configuration. I mean, with the limited amount of hosts, you have to say there's a file, Kibana, that Docker Compose file, and then we will kick it off. So, and this is something you should do on all hosts. I mean, on Logstash, you should also go and say .env and configure the available Elasticsearch host, because only with that the clients can survive a failover when one Elasticsearch node goes down. So like so, and then we can say Docker ps, and this is for Logstash and API Builder, Docker stop, and also stop. And then Docker Compose up. -d. So it might be that Kibana has an issue. Let's see, docker logs. Let's see what Kibana is doing. If it comes up, even if one of the configured nodes is down, but I think it should work anyway. So let's see, it's still not up and running. We are still missing that final line, which tells me that, that tells me that the Kibana server is running. So that means it came up even if one node is down. So now I can access Kibana again to see what's going on. And let's have a look for logstash. Docker logs, logstash. It also reported an error. So that means that one of the Elasticsearch nodes is unreachable, but still it is running. It has all pipelines running, and I believe Logstash finally has started. So that means the data is flying into Elasticsearch anyway. And I think there is no need. There is a need for, but just for traffic monitoring or for monitoring that's even not necessary now. So that means now we have basically configured everything to be HA. And if I now go into my gateway manager and try to execute a request, let's say we make docker logs, docker ps, docker logs, and we say we would like to see if API Builder is able to communicate with the, let's say, not fully available Elasticsearch cluster. And you see it is available, it can perform all the requests to the remaining Elasticsearch nodes. That's why we see the traffic and we can filter and so on. Even if one Elasticsearch node is down, let's have a look for Kibana, how that looks like. Stack management or stack monitoring is better. You see 2 nodes, but the status itself, it's still green because all of the desired replicas are reachable and are available, and that's why we are still okay. Okay, that was a pretty long video, and in the next video, I will explain how you can set up authentication and authorization for the Elasticsearch stack.